What does Lara do? No, she jumps to the helicopter, which was pretty awesome, and she puts a tracker on the thing instead of grabbing the box, and then she falls anyway. Like, you might say, okay, she might have fallen if she grabbed the box, but then she does that, like, immediately after. So if that was already part of the plan, then listen, just... oh. So because the tracker, they track it to Hong Kong, where they find that he's under them. Somehow. I don't get that. Wait, what game is he playing? Is that... I think that's Thunderstrike. Or Thunderhawk, depending on localization. That's actually an interesting little reference, because that's a core design game. As long as it doesn't come into play in the actual plot or anything later. What was I saying? Right, Hong Kong. And I guess his secret lab is beneath a mall? On one hand, that's the last place I would have expected it to be. On the other hand, how did you do that? Like, who did you, what? Wait. And then they find it, get this, they don't do any, like, super awesome sleuthing. They just watch a guy walk into it, and then take him hostage and get him to open the door with zero resistance. And hey, pro tip for aspiring supervillains out there, that may be a really good design choice would be to have your security room set up in such a way where the security guards don't have their backs to the front door. I get that they're looking at the cameras, but you could turn the whole setup around and, like, have some bulletproof glass there or something so they could, like, look around and be like, oh, right, you're supposed to be here, instead of Terry and Lara just walking up here and knocking them out. And then she's like, I'm gonna go off on my own, because she always does that. And Terry stays behind, because of course he does. And then Lara sets off the alarm by cutting a wire, and then gets all the lab rats to go off. And some are wearing masks and some aren't. I feel like that's just a massive, massive violation of safety protocols. They're working with viruses and stuff. But anyway, the mercenaries aren't wearing any kind of protective gear, so go figure. And the one's insistent that it must be Lara, not an actual breach. Of course, if it was a breach, he'd be dead, so that's an awful big risk to take. I mean, he's right, but he could have been wrong. I'm just throwing it out there. So it's a pretty decent gunfight here. Lara gets the upper hand and decides not to kill the lead mercenary because he has to do more screen time in his contract. She actually read ahead in the script and saw that he was supposed to live, so she doesn't actually just shoot him, because that would be too easy, I guess. So she contacts the nerd on the line, she gets the analysis that she needs, they figured out it's all based on song, and they have to sing the map somehow, I don't know, this is where things get sketchy. It's all activated by, like, sound tunes. And all the while, Jonathan Rhys has returned with more reinforcements. And Terry, instead of, I don't know, shooting him or warning Lara this is happening, he proceeds to not do either of those things. Now, at first I thought this was a huge gaping flaw in the movie's script, until later, which I'll get to in a moment. Anyway, Lara gets held up for a bit, but she does manage to escape with some help from Terry, who still doesn't shoot the bad guy. More on that in a bit. However, Jonathan's smart, and using his brain, he figures out that, oh, Lara must have a house. I don't know why that didn't occur to him sooner. Anyway, they make their way up the skyscraper. Like, instead of out in the street, they climb the building, because that makes sense, where Terry has stashed some flight suits for them to use to escape. No, literally, they're those wing suits with the parachutes in the back. It's a really cool scene, except I don't understand how nor when this happened. Like, Lara didn't even know he did it. And I think he paid off the guys on the boat they land on to put these here, but, like, when did he have the time to do that, and how did he know that they were gonna have to climb that building, that specific building, to do this ridiculous stunt? And do the police not notice that there's an unlicensed, unscheduled base jumping off a skyscraper? Because generally you need a lot of clearances to even do that, and yet they fly all the way out into the middle of the bay and, land on a ship really conveniently. It's good there was no wind that day, because otherwise they would have been screwed. Speaking of screwed, they make out later, except Laura's just tricking him into that so she can handcuff him, because she knows he didn't take the shot on Jonathan, and she wants to know why. And he doesn't actually give her an answer, which is weird, because even I, seeing the entire movie, still have no idea why he didn't just shoot the guy. So Lara leaves him there, because she doesn't need him anymore, and finds a random family with a television that she can hijack to contact Bryce. And Okay, I'll take it that she has the technology to do it that way. But B, the Chinese family that she just hijacked the living room from, they were watching SpongeBob, has no questions about this. This whole thing where they play the tune and read the map, and I don't know... Whoa! Also, the whole time Bryce is actually being held hostage by Jonathan and his men, who I know some time has passed, but still somehow managed to get on the clear opposite side of the planet in what couldn't have been more than a day or so. Tops. Like, he must have booked it. Also, he's wanted by the MI6, yet he found a way to sneak into the UK. With nobody knowing that. Okay. But anyway, they figure out the Cradle life is actually in Africa, because that is the obvious place for that, evolutionarily speaking. And Lara has another friend named Kosa, and I love this guy. This dude's awesome. He's only in the movie for like 10 minutes of screen time tops, but I think he's great. He and Lara have really decent chemistry. They're obviously good friends. He's pretty funny. They joke around. He's infinitely better than Terry ever was. I really wish Lara had just been palling around with him the whole time. If she was gonna have to do this as a duo effort, at least take someone who's actually kind of likable. Kosa leads her to a tribe that's been guarding the Cradle of Life for generations. They insist she not pursue this matter any further. But she's Lara Croft. She's like, I'm gonna do it anyway. And they're like, okay, it's a terrible idea, but whatever. So, on their way there, of course, Jonathan and his men show up and take Lara hostage because he's kidnapped both Bryce and Hillary. And of course he forces Lara to lead him to the Cradle of Life. Why he feels he still needs her actually escapes me though, because he has the entire mercenary force, he knows where it's at. He doesn't need Lara at all. This isn't like with Powell, where he felt he still needed Lara's skills. Jonathan has no reason to keep her around, but he does. And then they meet the Shadow Guardians. They are the tallest of mountains and they are the roughest of waves. And this scene is actually really awesome. I love these things. Lara figures out that they respond to movement because they're actually blind. But they're not deaf. It says they're blind. Which is weird because Jonathan intimidates her into opening the door to the Cradle of Life by shooting a gun. And the Shadow Guardians don't respond. So, I know they're supposed to only respond to movements, but first of all, if they're blind, how do they detect movement? That logically means they hear sound, but they don't respond to the gunshot. I don't get it. I don't understand what's happening here. Meanwhile, Terry has figured out how to pursue Lara and actually winds up saving both Bryce and Hillary, so that was nice of him. The plot also conveniently reveals that Bryce kinda knows how to fly a helicopter from all the simulations he's done. Also, Thunderstrike and or Thunderhawk, not an actual trainer for flying an actual helicopter. Bryce does admit he's spent 2 hours in an actual helicopter, which, okay, it's better than nothing, which is basically what Terry says to him, but I still think it's funny they worked that as an actual plot point. I thought that was just an obscure reference. I don't get it. Also, I love this scene because they're using a night filter, and you know, night filters can work if done correctly. This is not one of those times. Look, I know it's bright outside. But you couldn't have filmed it anywhere else or waited for some cloud cover or something. I can tell there's sun in the background. You're not fooling anybody. Once they're in the Cradle of Life, things get weird. Physics don't work properly here. They're on the ceiling, then they're on the floor, then they're on the wall. Everything's all over the place. And then Lara and Jonathan find Pandora's box. And they have to get it, but not open it. And Jonathan wants it, and Lara wants to stop him. So logically, Jonathan should just shoot her, because he can see it now, but he says he wants to use her to get it because it's sitting in a vat of acid. Which, okay, he didn't know it was gonna be, but at least at this point, I can logically see why he would want to use her to get it without, you know, burning his hand off. Okay, this is the part that really bothers me. They get into a struggle over this thing. You know, Lara fights him. But Jonathan Rhys is not Manfred Powell. Manfred Powell was a lawyer, but he was obviously trained in martial arts. He clearly could hold his own to a certain degree and had certain skills that not many people had. So he could theoretically go somewhat toe-to-toe on the same level as Lara Croft. Jonathan Rhys is a scientist. He's a Nobel Prize winner known for his mind. And even as a terrorist and a wanted man, he's not exactly a physical force to trifle with. He uses viruses. He works out of a laboratory. He's not an armed combatant. And there are so many times where they are struggling, where Lara could either, I don't know, beat his face in, or steal the gun from him. There were so many times that I lost count where she could have disarmed him and taken the gun. But no, that's not what happens. They continue struggling until Terry gets there, and it's only because he distracted him that suddenly he winds up falling in the acid and getting exactly what he deserves. But I'm like, Lara could have done that by herself. Okay, you're really underselling Croft right now, and it really bothers me, especially in this scene. So then they get the box, and Terry wants to take it. Lara says, no, we're not doing that. The thing is gonna kill everybody, because once you open Pandora's box, there's anti-life, and... But Terry is insistent because it can be sold for a high bounty. And this whole plot was supposed to be about how Terry was trying to change his ways and prove to Lara that he would never abandon her again or his men like he did for money. Except the ending shows the exact opposite of that. He's still a horrible person, and he still is willing to not only abandon people for profit, but unleash effectively Armageddon on the world for money. He's no better than Jonathan Rhys at this point. And Lara still is fighting feelings for him? Sweetie, Lara, hon, I know, maybe you dated for a few months or something, but yo, shoot him. She does, eventually. It takes a lot longer. Of course, this is after he not only is about to shoot her, but punches her in the face. He is a horrible person. And the movie tries to show this death as like a big weighty moment, like, oh no, Terry's dead. Oh, it's so sad. No, it's not sad. He deserved every bit of that. Frankly, I'm surprised she didn't just kick him into the vat of acid where he belongs. Because, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? If you're gonna give Lara Croft a love interest, at least make him redeemable somehow. He reminds me a little bit, so there's a character in the comics. Not the newer ones based off of the reboot, the old comics. I have a bunch of them because... oh god, I have to review them now. Anyway, there's a character by the name of Chase Carver. Now, Chase Carver is also an ex-boyfriend of Lara Croft. Chase's whole thing is that he stole money from Lara and cheated on her, which... why you cheated on Lara Croft? You got issues. In any event, the whole point of Chase's character arc was that he did a really bad thing. The comics make no lie about that. They, acknowledge this. But Chase spends his entire run in the comic books trying to prove to Lara that he knows what he did was wrong and he wants to redeem himself. He selflessly goes with her on adventures when she requests his help. Any item he gets as, a freelance Tomb Raider, he gives to her to pay back the money he stole. The dude spends the entire comic series that he's in it for trying to prove to Lara that he's sorry and that he is a changed person. And what happens is when he goes on his last run with Lara into a temple, he winds up dead. Spoiler on that 20-year-old comic at this point. But that death had way more weight to it. You wanna know why? Because Chase was a changed guy. Chase really cared about Lara. He really did love her, and he just wanted to prove that he knows he made a mistake and wanted her desperately to forgive him for what he did. It wasn't even like with Terry, who spent the entire time flirting with Lara and trying to get her into bed with him. Chase didn't even ask for that. He just wanted to be her friend. And that story with him was way more emotionally resonant than anything that happened between Terry or Lara in this entire friggin' movie. Because unlike Chase, Terry didn't actually change. He was still the same jerk he was when he was put in prison in the first place. When he abandoned her before, he spent this entire time trying to prove that he wasn't, and lo and behold, he is! So he gets shot, and he's dead. Lara leaves the box in the acid, goes off into the sunset, and that was the last of the Jolie saga when it comes to Tomb Raider. As for this movie, well, as you may have noticed, it is far and away inferior to the first movie, like by a significant portion. Though critics may say it's better as a film, I think it's far worse as a video game film. It doesn't do Lara's character justice, the story isn't as good, the supporting cast isn't as good, the villain isn't as good, and there's so many points that don't make sense or don't clarify, and the overarching romance plot doesn't mean anything, because there was no final sacrifice, of devotion. There was no loyalty proven. The only thing that was proven was Lara was right not to trust Terry. She spent the entire time not trusting him, yet thinks she might get proven wrong, maybe tragically when he dies, like, helping her, kind of like Chase did. But no, Terry dies like the jerk he lived as. And I just feel like that's not really satisfying as an ending. I mean, he got what he deserved, but I kind of didn't want it to end that way. Lara doesn't have to be right about everything all the time. I'm just saying. In any event, is it worth a watch if you're a fan? I'd say it's worth a watch if you're not a fan, because I think fans in particular don't like this movie just because of how it handled the character and the script and the writing and everything else. As an action movie, it's alright. If you get the opportunity to watch it, I don't think it's atrocious. It's certainly entertaining, but it drags in some points. It's a little too long. It could have had more time on the cutting room floor. And again, as a Tomb Raider film, I don't think it delivers in any regard. So there's no more Tomb Raider movies to talk about. Except there is one, isn't there? Eventually. I haven't seen it yet. But eventually. Till next time. This is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.